Roglič at the very last touch of wheels. But it's going to be Remco Evenepoel. Huge statement by this man. Ding dong, the bell rings. It tolls on everybody else because this man is absolutely in charge. My mountain, my race, my jersey.
With the World Championships having come hot on the heels of the Tours de France this year, it really feels like the Vuelta a España has come around quicker than ever. It starts this Saturday, the 26th of August.
Coming up, a look at each of the stages, including the one or two flat ones, and a look at the favourites, including Vingegaard, Roglič, Thomas and defending champion Remco Evenepoel.
The thing with the Vuelta is that because it comes at the end of the season, I'm never quite as excited about it as I am for the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France, but then it never disappoints. This race, does it? There's always some cracking racing, and this year you'll be able to watch that racing on GCN Plus if you are in Europe or the Asia Pacific, excluding China, Japan and New Zealand. We'll be back with the breakaway pre and post race show daily, and there will also be a whole heap of free to view content on the app so that you can keep abreast of everything going on in and around the race.
Great stuff. Right, onto the route for what will be the 78th edition of the race. It kicks off this Saturday in Barcelona with a 14.8 kilometre team time trial.
And believe it or not, it's only the second time that the race has actually started in Barcelona, the last one being 61 years ago in 1962. This year, the race covers 3,154 kilometres. There are 4 flat stages, 6 hilly ones, 7 mountain tests, 1 individual time trial and 1 team time trial, and 2 stages that the organisers describe as flat with a high altitude finish.
Not flat then.
Well, not really, no. Imagine telling a sprinter that. Yeah, it's flat until it's not at the end.
Anyway, on to the first stage. Team time trials are a rare commodity in men's pro cycling these days. We had one in Paris-Nice back in March, but before that, the last one we had one at a high level was at this race last year, albeit up in Utrecht in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I was looking back at that one. It's 9 Ks longer than what they'll face this year. Won by Jumbo-Visma, who were 13 seconds ahead of Ineos, 14 ahead of Quick-Step. So in theory, with the race being shorter this year, the gap should be even closer this time. I was looking at the map though, and I've counted 18 90-degree bends over that 14.8 kilometre circuit. So not as technical as the recent Glasgow circuit for the World Championships in the road races, but in a team time trial, I think it might feel just as technical.
Could be like a roller coaster, that one, isn't it? Stage 2 starts a little further up the coast in Matalo and heads inland before returning to Barcelona. There are a couple of KOMs en route and then a flat run into the city. However, the sprinters won't like what they see when they get there.
Not at all, because they've stuck in a really technical and quite lumpy finishing loop around Montjuic, which includes a 3rd cat climb. It's 900 metres long at almost 10% average gradient, and it finishes with just 3.5 kilometres to go to the finish line. That finish line being next to the Lewis Company Olympic Stadium. And I think that climb puts this completely out of reach for the sprinters in the race, despite the official website claiming otherwise.
Yeah, well, I'd say so too. It's the climb regularly used on the final stage of the Volta Catalunya, and although they'll only do it once on this stage, it is hard enough to create gaps.
I'd say so, yeah. There's not going to be an opportunity for the sprinters one day later either, because it's the first summit finish of the race. So they head across the border into Andorra after 107 kilometres and immediately take on the first of 2 massive climbs. That first one is the Col d'Ordino, 17.3 Ks at 7.7%. Then they've got a 13 kilometre descent to tackle before the climb to the finish. Arensal, Andorra, that one's 8.3 Ks at 7.7%.
You really can't afford to come into this race undercooked if you want to go for the GC.
No.
That is pretty brutal for stage 3, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely hard enough to get a good sense of how the favourites are going, I think, with that summit finish. Stage 4 takes the race out of Andorra and back into Spain. There are 2 3rd cat climbs in the last third of the stage, but the last one is on a really wide road and it finishes with 30 Ks still to go to the finish line in Tarragona. So I reckon that this should be the first opportunity for the sprinters.
Stage 5 is another sprint day and they've better make the most of it because their opportunities are few and far between at this race. 186 kilometres to Burriana.
Stage 6 then is the second big summit finish of the race this year, finishing atop Pico del Buitre after 183 kilometres of undulating terrain. This is one of 4 stages at this year's Vuelta, which has over 4,000 metres of elevation gain.
Final climb takes him to the Alhambra Observatory. It's 11 kilometres at 8%, but with lots of rampas inhumanas, i.e. gradients above 15%. It's a climb that was last used in the race in 2019 and saw some significant gaps amongst the GC favourites.
And that means actually that Roglič will know this climb because he was there in 2019. Stage 7 is the second longest of the race this year, just over 200 kilometres, but on paper it's actually one of the easiest. It starts at 700 metres above sea level, but descends gently into Valencia and then the coastline, which it then hugs en route to the finish in Oliva, one for the sprinters, we think.
Yeah, the following day is back inland to the mountains though, starting in the popular cycling destination of Denia. They head westwards to tackle 5 categorised climbs, which seem to get increasingly difficult as the day goes on.
Yeah, they do, don't they? The last of those is a first cat, the Tourette de Getty, first used in 1998, but last used in 2017. Alaphilippe won from the breakaway that day, whilst Froome and Conor were locked in a kind of GC battle together behind. It's short, 3.9 kilometres, but there are more inhumane rams of over 20%. And you were there at that race, Conor. Have you got any memories of this
I was.
climb?
It's brought us back a bit when we were just talking there, and I do remember starting the climb thinking, I've only got about 4k to go. It's taken absolutely ages to get to the top. It was so steep. And just as we were starting it, the riders who won that stage were already riding back down to the bus and were getting on their bus by the time I started.
You said it had whistles. I think it was a new
Yeah.
thing, wasn't it, to sort of make the general public aware that riders were coming through. But all you saw as you were climbing was these riders with whistles.
I just had all these whistles going on. I was like, what's happening? And I was riding, people whistling at me, but it's just so steep you can brake on it getting down. So you needed to warn people you were coming back down. So it was actually a good idea. But yeah.
Well, one
Tough
to watch
day.
from the comfort of your sofa this year.
Yeah, looking forward to a different angle of that climb this year. Anyway, moving on, they start the next day in Cartagena, which makes the most southerly point of the route this year, and the end of the first block of racing.
Yeah, it's described as hilly, that stage. There's a first cat climb after 60 Ks, and then another summit finish. The Alto Calabaza de la Cruz, only second cat, but possibly the most irregular looking climb I have ever seen. There's like 3 mini descents within that climb and more 20% gradients over the 8 kilometres to the top.
Not one to find your rhythm in then.
Not really, no.
That evening, the riders will fly up to Valladolid, where the race will resume 2 days later with stage 10, which is the only individual TT of the race. 25 kilometres long, chance for Remco Evenepoel to show off his rainbow bands.
Yeah, although Filippo Ganna might have something to say about that. I was actually looking at the map for this, and the first part of the time trial, it's quite technical and it includes an unclassified climb, but then they go out on a sort of out and back route on decent roads that are almost pan flat. So, like you said, it is kind of perfect for the aero bullet that is Remco Evenepoel.
His problem is that his main GC rivals are also pretty handy on a TT bike.
Oh, true, yeah.
So the gaps might not be as big as he'd liked, but we'll see. Stage 11 is one of those, though, that the organisers describe as a flat with an uphill finish.
Yes, bizarre. I can't get my head around that. Anyway, that uphill being a first cat climb to La Laguna Negra de Vinuesa, 6.5 Ks, 6.8%, but you've guessed it, plenty of brutally steep ramps, especially when you get towards the top.
Dan Martin won on this climb 3 years ago, outsprinting Roglič and Carapaz on what was just day 3 of the race.
I remember that one, yeah. That was a good win for Dan Martin, wasn't it? There is the potential, from what I've read, for crosswinds on stage 12, which takes the race further eastwards to Zaragoza. Whether the wind blows or not, this is going to be one for the sprinters, isn't it? And after that stage, there's a reasonably long transfer towards the French border, which they will then cross on day 13.
Which is the only stage which goes over 2,000 metres above sea level, finishing, as it does, atop the Col de Tourmalet.
Yep, we've seen a lot of the Col de Tourmalet, haven't we, over the last couple of months. What's also interesting about this stage is that after a short climb from kilometre 0, they then descend for about 30 kilometres. After that descent, they'll hit the Aubisque and then the Col de Spandel before that summit finish on the Tourmalet.
There is one stage later in the race with more elevation gain, but for me, this is the Queen stage of the race this year. Over 4,100 metres of climbing in total. More than 3,700 metres of that comes in the last 100 kilometres of the race.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
That's a lot.
Not one for a non-climber. Stage 14 is another brute with 2 Especial category climbs preceding another first category summit finish.
Toughest climb of the day is the Porte de la Rue, which they tackle from the French side with the border at the top. It's a mountain that's been used twice at the Tour, the first being 1996 when it was part of a 260-kilometre stage, widely regarded as one of the toughest of all time.
And one that I think was supposed to be a sort of celebration for Miguel Indurain, finishing as it did in Pamplona, but that turned out to be the last climb that he would ever do at the Tour de France. And I'm sure he's tried to erase it from his memory. 15 k's long, 8% average gradient, and again, some incredibly steep slopes within that.
From there, the rest of the stage is in Spain, but they'll be back close to the French border by the finish at La Rebeligua. A 9.5 kilometre, 6.3% climb. Stage 15 marks the end of the second week and looks like one for the breakaway.
It does, yeah. 158 k's from Pamplona to Lecaneri, with a couple of second cats and a third. Too hard for the sprinters, we think, but probably not quite hard enough for any GC action there.
Second rest day is in Santander and they start stage 16 a little further down the coast in Playa Lengres. Many will be pleased that it's the shortest stage of the race if you don't include the final stage into Madrid.
I think this is going to be one of those other ones which is flat with a high altitude finish, or however they described it. It's only a second cat there at the finish, but it is another brutally steep ascent to Béziers, which has never been used before at this race. I don't know how they keep finding brand new roads and brand new climbs, or at least never used before, but I am looking forward to watching because that one has a final 2 kilometres with gradients pretty consistently over 10%.
Stage 17 is another short stage, 125 kilometres, but it finishes top of the Alto de Langluru, one that I know only too well.
Yeah, you had to do that when you raced the Vuelta in 2019, didn't you?
I did, and I went back there recently for a GCN Plus documentary, so make sure you check that out if you haven't done so already. It was pretty brutal reacquaintance with the steep
I bet, yeah.
gradients
I'm
of the
sure you were
Angliru.
pleased as punch to get to go back to that climb.
Oh, my arms are even hurting. I'll be quicker crawling up the thing.
It's a climb that became infamous from the very first time that it was used at the race, and it's arguably the hardest climb in all of pro cycling. 12.4 kilometres the distance, 10% the average gradient, but there's a section, as Conor is remembering now, I'm sure, of 6 kilometres that average is close to 14%.
Oh, it's steep. And you see it rearing in front of you and you almost get this claustrophobic feeling of like trying to keep the bike moving. You've got nowhere to go because it's just a sheer drop down the side of the mountain. Not for the faint of heart or legs, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And make sure you do not miss that stage, Wednesday the 13th of September.
More mountains follow the day after en route to the Puerta de la Cruz de Linares, which is another climb that's never before been used at the race or any other pro race, from what I could see in my research online.
It's just like they've got a never-ending supply of hurt in Spain.
It is, yeah.
Isn't it? It's incredible. This one is 8 kilometres at 8%, but with plenty more double-digit gradients.
Do you know what? The more I look at the overall parcours and all the race profiles, the harder this Vuelta looks. Although there is a flat stage to follow that one of 2 for the sprinters in the final 3 days of racing. But then comes stage 20. I can't quite work out what I think about stage 20. It's 207 kilometres, which is the longest of the race this year. And it has got the most elevation gain at 4,431 metres.
But,
well, the hardest climb that day is only a third category, but there are a lot of them. I think there's 10 third category climbs in total, but there are also no steep ones. They do a couple of different circuits in the middle of that day and then finish down in Guadarrama. But being third cat and not that steep, I'm not really sure how much we can expect from that stage.
ambush territory?
Maybe, yeah. I'd maybe need to take a closer look at the nature of the climbs, how narrow the roads are, etc. But there is the potential for that. I think it depends really on who's leading the race at that point and how strong their respective team is, how well they can control it, basically.
After that, it will be a short drive to Madrid for the 21st and final stage, which more than likely will finish with a bunch sprint.
And that'll be that, won't it? Grand Tour season done for yet another year. And I've got to say, looking at that course, it's going to finish with a very deserving winner of La Vuelta a España.
Yeah, just before we get on to who that winner might be, a quick shout out for our brand new merchandise. We've got a new collection of t-shirts, which myself and Dan are sporting here. And if you want to get your hands on one, then do check out the shop over on shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. I quite like this one with the different jerseys.
Well, I noticed you did nab that one pretty quickly when you saw the choices. I'm happy with mine now. Vamos.
Yeah, I quite like mine with the nose ring. The colour, the red jersey does bring the Vuelta back to me. I've got the theme tune of it stuck in my head as well, which raises nightmares. Anyway, moving on to the riders at this year's race, and I reckon we should start with Jumbo-Visma, since they won both Grand Tours so far this year and come into this one with what looks to be the strongest team.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Not only do they have 3-time Vuelta winner Primož Roglič, they've also got 2-time Tour de France champion Jonas Vingegaard. And I'll tell you what, if the Dane comes to the Vuelta with the same form he had in France in July, everybody else should be incredibly worried, including Primož Roglič himself.
Surely he won't be going that well, though.
We'll see. I mean, I wouldn't have thought he'll be quite at that peak. I sort of hope he isn't, because if he is on the same form as he was in July, this race might be over before it's even begun. Anyway, Roglič has had some decent preparation. After a lot of training at altitude, he did the Vuelta a Burgos not long ago. His 4th stage race of the season and his 4th overall win, taking 2 individual stages along the way. Unbeaten in stage races so far this year. That's incredible.
That is incredible, isn't it? A key support rider in the mountains will be Sepp Kuss, who is embarking on his 3rd Grand Tour of the year and who has the chance to be on the winning team for all of them.
Yeah, no team has ever won all 3 Grand Tours in a single season before, so that's a big goal for Jumbo-Visma. But Sepp Kuss, I reckon, will be looking forward to his share of the prize money being dished out at the end of this year, won't he? Kelderman, Van Baarle, Tratnik, Walter and Gesink make up the rest of a very well-rounded squad, who I think everybody will agree are going to be extremely hard to beat.
So what about Soudal Quickstep? Well, we know Evenepoel is on good form. He won the TT Champs at the Worlds and San Sebastian before it, and of course, he won this race last year.
He did, but in the absence, in the end, of Primož Roglič, wasn't it? But we all know what Remco Evenepoel is capable of. He'll be even more motivated, I would say, to win this year, given the competition that's on the start line. And he should have a decent team around him at Soudal Quickstep. Not one that's going to rival Jumbo-Visma, but decent nonetheless.
The exact makeup of it is yet to be confirmed, but it's likely that Van Sevenant, Catania and Vavaca will be in attendance. Yeah,
we're recording this on the Monday before the race, and there's quite a few teams that we don't know yet. But one that we do know, they've released theirs, is the Ineos Grenadiers. Geraint Thomas, their GC leader for the Vuelta, oh so close, wasn't he, to winning the Giro d'Italia back in May. That one must still be hurting for him. But he's back for his 2nd Grand Tour of the season and his first appearance at La Vuelta since 2015. Laurens de Plus and Tayman Allensman will be back to support him in the mountains, whilst Filippo Ganna will, I'm sure, be taking a lot of wind on the rolling and flat stages for him.
I'd love to see Geraint Thomas up there again. He's 37 now, but he has a history of nailing his targets. Egan Bernal was a bit of a surprise selection, having only just returned to Grand Tour racing at the Tour, whilst Caterviejo, Hiduk and Fraile are all the final 3 workhorses who might also get a chance to ride for themselves and go for a stage.
I would be over the moon if Caterviejo won a stage of this Vuelta and not a time trial stage, because he's won 10 races as a pro and they've all been either time trials or prologues. He's never crossed the line first in a professional road race, and I would love to see it. I think he's very well liked within the peloton. Now, in terms of odds, Juan Ayuso of UAE Team Emirates is a much bigger favourite than any rider from Ineos Grenadiers, and you can sort of see why, can't you? 3rd overall last year whilst he was still a teenager, and looking good this year once he got over that knee injury that hampered him at the start.
Yeah, partly because of that injury. He's only had 19 days of racing so far this season, but he's had 3 wins, all at World Tour level, and should be the freshest rider on the start line. The doubt's still lingering whether that injury is 100% better and how bad he was after a recent race crash.
Anyway, his teammate Joao Almeida will be co-leader. He looks good in Poland, didn't he, where he finished 2nd overall to Mohoric. He's Mr. Consistency, Almeida. He's done 4 Grand Tours in his career, never ever been outside the top 6.
Damn, that's pretty.
Yeah, and he's still really young as well.
Yeah, Varden Soler will offer ample backup in the mountains. UAE look to have a really strong team once again.
Yeah, I'm quietly optimistic about Ayuso's chances of doing something special at this race. We shall see.
That'd be good.
Now, another rider who's high up on the bookies list, who I'm less confident about, is Enric Mas. Understandable that his odds are reasonably short, given that he's often at his best for La Vuelta, but he's a real unknown this year, you've got to say, because he crashed out of the Tour de France on day 1, and we've not seen him race since.
No, he was initially down for Burgos, but he did skip it in the end, presumably to concentrate on training for a little longer. He probably will be up there, won't he? Let's be honest, he's not going to win the GC in this company.
Probably not, although I do hope for him and for his team and in fact for the fans, that he is up there. Because I know we've got Ayuso, but it's nice for Spanish fans to have home riders to support. Anyway, Alexander Vlasov of Bora Hansgrohe is the only other team leader who has odds of under 100 to 1 for the GC. He looked better on the second mountain stage of Burgos than he did on the first, so hopefully that was a good sign for him.
It's another rider looking for redemption after having to pull out the Giro through illness. Leonard Kamna is also set to ride. He did finish the Giro just inside the top 10.
Yeah, he did. He was good there, wasn't he? Higuita is also supposed to be racing for that team. He's a threat whenever he's on good form in the mountains, isn't he? And probably also riding for Bora Hansgrohe will be Kjan Uijtdebroeks, the young Belgian talent who's been having a solid season when it comes to stage racing.
Bahrain Victorious are another team who've yet to confirm their roster as we record this, but they're likely to have Buitrago, Caruso and Pauwels too.
And maybe Landa. Maybe Landa. If he does do it, Landa, I said Landa a lot, didn't I then? But if he does do it, it will be his final Grand Tour for Bahrain Victorious before joining Soudal Quickstep, presumably to help Evenepoel in the mountains next year. Other names to watch out for, well, we've got former podium finisher Hugh Carthy of EF Education Easy Post, Eddie Dunbar of Jayco Alula, who was really impressive at the Giro d'Italia, and Romain Bardet, although it does look like he's concentrating more on stage wins than on the GC in this race. Oh, and Lee Meintjes of Intermarché as well.
Right then, on to the sprinters.
Yeah, this might not take too long, mightn't it? Because, well, I mean, hopefully a couple more sprint names will be added to the start list before Saturday. But even if they are, there is distinct lack of sprinters at the race this year.
And you can see why. Given that the route we've already been over, as things stand, we've got one Sebastian Milano, winner of the final stage last year, even though he was on lead-out duties. Gerben Tyson, he's had 3 decent wins in one-day races this year. Milan Menton of Lotto Destiny and Malin van den Berg of EF.
It's not exactly star-studded, is it, when it comes to sprinters? So from that point of view, I'd say it's a really good opportunity for those guys to get themselves a stage win at a Grand Tour. Danny van Poppel, we should mention as well, for Bora Hansgrohe. He looks like he'll be their designated sprinter at the Vuelta in the absence of Bennett and Mears. And I think he could actually be the rider to beat in the sprints.
He was close on Sunday at the BMX Cycle Classics.
He was.
Wasn't he? And
he almost caught Pedersen, didn't he? Not quite.
Yeah. Anyway, that is about it for the sprinters. And since that section has been so short, we thought we'd go over a few lesser-known names that we're really looking forward to seeing in action.
Yeah, 2 lesser-known names to those that aren't really ardent cycling fans. And they both race for Groupama FDJ and they're both incredibly young. Lenny Martinez and Romain Gregoire. Martinez... well, he's the son of Miguel Martinez, who older viewers might remember from mountain bike days. He's quite small, he's a real pure climber. I don't expect him to be up there on the GC, but I do expect to see him shine on a couple of the mountainous days this year. Whilst Romain Gregoire is a pure racer, this guy really excites me. He's won 5 races so far this season, which is his first as a pro, and I would not be surprised to see him already up there on the stage 2 around that circuit in Barcelona. In fact, he's my outside tip for the win there.
And the other rider we can't wait to see back in action too is Thomas de Gendt. He's not had the best season so far, but you can just never count him out. Filippo Ganna will be looking for redemption after losing out in the World's TT, and finally Guido Ciccone.
Yeah, Ciccone likes to light up a bike race, doesn't he? So it'd be good to see him on the start list. Well, I, for one, am very much looking forward to this 3rd and final Grand Tour of the season. But before we end this preview, we should make our predictions, shouldn't we? I'll let you go first.
I'm going to go for Roglič, mainly because he was looking great at the Giro. He's got that Grand Tour on the bank. I think he'll be a bit more relaxed now at the Vuelta, and he's had a bit more time to recover before.
Is he a heart pick or a head pick or both?
I think he's more of a head pick. I think, yeah. I think my heart pick might be Vingegaard.
He's your heart pick?
Well, yeah, because I just think he's very calculated, and I think his Tour win, they prepare for that so well, and I think the Vuelta maybe is now a bit of an afterthought. So I think for that reason he might not have that same level of prep going to the Vuelta.
But well, to counter that, Vingegaard is my head pick. He's my prediction to win the Vuelta, because I just don't think he'd be on the start line if it weren't for thinking that he could win it. I mean, it's an incredible team, you know, and even if he's a couple of % down on what he was at the Tour de France, I think he can still win it. My heart pick would be Uijtdebroeks. Not going to happen, not this year at least. But he's just such a talent and a really, really nice character to boot. He was actually featured on our documentary that covered the Tour de l'Avenir last year, Stars of the Future, so you can watch that on GCN Plus if you haven't done so already. We would love to hear your predictions, or at least read them in the comment section below, so please make sure that you leave them there. We'll revisit this and see how Conor and I got on with our predictions, but we'd also love to have your company for the race live if you're in the right territory. It starts this Saturday, just to remind you from the very beginning, the 26th of August, so hopefully we'll see you then. Thanks for watching.